What's up, my raunchy raspberry pandowdy? This is Rob from The Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Daily Grind, I'm going to be bringing back a series that I haven't talked about since January of 2017. Yes, we are going to be hybridizing some Warframes, but in sexy time terms, we're going to be making some Warframe babies. Now, if you guys want more details on this as to some of the older babies that we created, I'm actually going to go ahead and leave a link in the top corner to the 2 original videos where you get to see a much fluffier A Gay Guy Plays. Regardless, there are a couple rules to how all of this is done. First and foremost, this is a hybridization of 2 Warframes, okay? I saw in the comments ages ago where people were putting 4 different Warframes there. I'm like, no. We're making Warframe babies. That's 2, okay? We're just blending 2. Next up, you cannot overlap abilities. So let's pretend one Warframe has a great ultimate ability and this other Warframe has a great ultimate ability. You cannot move one of those abilities into a lower slot. You can't do that at all. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. You can only have them in their current designated spots. No moving them around. And the last rule is you can't drastically alter abilities to basically create a whole new ability. Now, I get it if you gotta tweak it a little bit to make it fit the theme better, but in general, you gotta keep the ability the same. Now, I actually have a great submission from way back in the day. As soon as they pointed this out, I was like mind blown. This is the perfect Warframe baby. This is the apex. This is the peak of the summit. There's nothing else that we can create that's better. However, we do have some really good ones today. Now, this example is actually the baby of Chroma and Ninja. And maybe you could name that one down in the comments below. So what they did was simple, but because of Chroma's passive, it just became way more interesting. So first and foremost, the first ability would be Firewalker. The second ability would be Elemental Ward. The third ability would be Vex Armor. And the fourth ability would be Divine Spears. Now, what makes this really interesting is the fact that you can inherit a passive from one of those Warframes. And of course, Chroma's ability is to swap between different elements. So Firewalker isn't just Firewalker anymore. Now it's Ice Walker. Now it's Toxin Walker. Now it's Electricity Walker. And in addition to all of that, Divine Spears takes on a whole new life as well. Instead of just being, puncture and impact damage, they get all of these cool elemental benefits. So now we have a really, really tanky version of Ninja. Plus, he gets all of these cool elemental swap abilities. So in all, I think that was a fantastic Warframe baby. Now, the last one I'm going to go ahead and add into this list is kind of like a new rule. And I guess when I say new, I want to underline the word new because since January of 2017, Octavia, Harrow, Gora, Korra, Revenant, Garuda, I stopped using my fingers all of a sudden, Baruch, Hildren, Wisp, Goss, and Grendel were all released. So when I created these Warframe babies, I wanted to make sure that I was using some of the Warframes that were released more recently since the launch of that one. So if you guys are going to make some Warframe babies down in the comments below, I highly suggest that you go ahead and use the new frames, mainly because of the fact in the previous video, we had a lot of babies already in the comments using the older frames. So try to incorporate these new frames in there. So the first one that I came up with, because you guys knew that I love me a stealth frame, and Wisp as a launch was so fantastic, but there's still another invisibility frame that I like quite well. So of course this is a blend between Loki and Wisp, and in my head I felt like this was total poltergeist territory. So, of course, we're going to go ahead and take Wisp's first ability, which is Reservoirs. So now you have Loki with all of these buffs. Health regeneration, the melee attack speed. I wouldn't necessarily want to put down the electricity ones because I wouldn't want to shock my enemies and let them know that I'm around. But, it's an option. You can choose. The second ability, of course, would be straight up invisibility. Don't get me wrong. I love the little Wisp from Wisp. And to me, that was cute, but invisibility, is just easier, right? And then of course we have Breach Surge, so that's the big like AoE stun and allows you to proc all of these little wisps that travel onto other enemies based on your damage. And of course Loki's Radial Disarm. So all in all, I think that it's a whole lot of trickery going on. There's a lot of CC going on. There's a lot of being able to jump from different place to place, but you have a more stable type of invisibility instead of having to jump all over the place. Now, when it comes to passives, you could take Wisp passives, which would actually help Loki if he needed to recast invisibility. Fantastic. Or you could just take the standard, wall cling that Loki has. But regardless, I think that makes for a very strong stealth frame, because of the Wisp, the Wisp Breach Surge with the melee attack speed and the stealth multipliers that Loki is going to get off of all of that. So I think it's absolutely freaking fantastic. Let's move on to the next one. Ooh, this one is all kinds of sexy. And I don't know why these two don't get shipped. But as soon as I was like, here, I was like, they should be shipped more. And this, of course, is Kahora and Necros, right? Okay, let's talk about this. First and foremost, the first ability would be Whip Claw, because it's a whip, right? It's a freaking whip. And if you played Magic the Gathering, think Whip of Erebos, right? And then, of course, we have Ensnare. So I think that those are two absolutely fantastic abilities for Korra/Necros to have, because you get some nice control out of all that and get the cool thematic part of the whip. Next up, of course, we have Necros Desecrate at number 3. Get all the loot in the world. And last, we have Shadows of the Dead. So what this opens it up to is basically you kind of have like a little bit of, I know this is kind of like, this is kind of like dark, but it's kind of like you're commanding these dead creatures that you've risen up with this whip, like the Whip of Erebos, a la MTG. But wouldn't it be even cooler if the Shadows of the Dead were converted into Shadow Cats? So instead of all these crazy bombards, you just have these like nutso cats like coming around, like a whole big old pack of cats. I think that would be amazing. And then of course the bonus control that you get, plus if you're using the augment for Necros to be able to kind of like create basically like the bodyguard shielding off of all of these, I think that would be absolutely fantastic and super duper crazy thematic. They're just dark creatures, and I kind of love it. Next one. It's actually kind of like a 2-for-1, but this one I really, really like. It's Nova and Hero. So we actually take Nova's Null Star, and then we have Penance from Hero and Thurible from Hero, and then we have Molecular Prime. Now, to me, this is actually really, really fantastic, mainly because of the fact that, number one, Null Star gives you damage resistance to Nova's health based on the amount of like Null Stars that they're floating around her, right? Next up, you have Penance, which basically drains all of your shields, but you have Null Star, which is gonna kind of like shield your health, right, from any damage. Then we have Thurible, which is going to be able to, replenish your energy stores. Also, let's not forget that Penance, you're going to be able to get like more reload speed, more fire rate, and you're going to be healing yourself and your allies, right? But combine that all with Molecular Prime, now you have this slow, so enemies' fire rates and their attack rates are going to be lower, right? And then they're also going to be taking 2 times damage in addition to all of that. So now, because of the fact that you get the attack buff from Penance, right? You're going to be able to take down those enemies really, really, really fast. And you're going to be able to generate energy. You're going to be able to protect your health via Null Star. And with the Molecular Prime, there is that augment, which is Molecular Fission, something like that, which adds to your Null Stars to kind of like refill them back to full. So all in all, it's like kind of like a tanky version of Nova and Hero combined that can support the team and really, really debuff enemies. So I think that that's absolutely fantastic. However, it is a really weird mix of spiritual and scientific. So I was like, hey, let's try this a different way. Let's do Nova and Hildren. Again, we're going to keep Null Star. Next up, we'll have Pillage, which will debuff enemies' shields and armor, right? Then we have Haven, which creates shielding for Nova, and sucks shielding from enemies. Then Molecular Prime to again slow these enemies down. Now, if we wanted to kind of create an interesting hybrid, we could take Nova's health all the way down to kind of like where Hildren's is. And of course give her Hildren's passive, but in addition to that, make Nullstar, like tweak it a little bit so that it applies to shielding as well, so it's like true damage resistance instead of just being damage resistance to health. It'll be true damage resistance for the shielding as well. So I think that that's like a nice little tweak that makes it flow even better. Then you have a great support frame, which is double debuffing enemies from Molecular Prime, then stripping their defenses via the use of Pillage. And then you also have, of course, the status clearing of Pillage. And then you have Haven, which of course is going to be cranking up the armor of your allies as well as yourself, depending on how many enemies are around. So I love that. I thought that that was a really, really cool mix. Now, the last one, okay, this is the last official one. I also made a kind of jokey one, but we'll get to that. I thought was the perfect mix of glass and reflections, which would be Mirage and Garah, right? So the first one would be Mirage's Hall of Mirrors. And then number 2 would be Garah's Splinter Storm. Then we would have Eclipse from Mirage, and then we would have Mass Vitrify from Garah. So it's just very kind of like reflection and lights, and I think that it would be a cool interplay with maybe having Garah's passive in there, where like if light shines, and maybe because it's Mirage, her Hall of Mirrors could kind of like create additional shine, which would kind of go along with Eclipse and would create flashes a little bit more regularly. And then of course you'd have Hall of Mirrors surrounded by a blizzard of Splinter Storms. Right? Wouldn't that be cool where it like replicated your Splinter Storm all the way around? Now, of course, there would have to be a way to kind of crash Mass Vitrify so that you could add it to your Splinter Storm. They'd have to find some creative way to do that. I was thinking maybe on the recast of Eclipse, because I believe that Eclipse is recastable. Hall of Mirrors isn't though, which is kind of weird, but that's definitely a thing that I was thinking maybe could kind of come into play, and then it would cause Mass Vitrify to shatter and then add into the Splinter Storm. But that on Hall of Mirrors as well would be kind of absolutely crazy. So really, really excited about the thought of that. Plus, wouldn't Mirage and Garah just have a really pretty baby overall? Like, I'm just talking about like strictly like looks wise. You combine the two of them, beautiful, right? Now the last one that I'm gonna put out there is a little bit of a joke. I don't really want to call it a joke, and the reason why I'm not making this an official one of the set is because it doesn't use the new kids, it uses the old kids. Again, it's Mirage, and it's actually got Chroma in there. And basically the first ability would be Hall of Mirrors. The second ability would be Sleight of Hand, right? So you get that cool way where you can kind of like trap enemies via all of these like leftover resources on the ground. The next would be Vex Armor, which would make Mirage pretty tanky. But last but not least would be Effigy. But the thing is, if we're using Mirage as like the visual of it and not necessarily Chroma, I was thinking, what if Mirage's Effigy was just like the Prism Ball? And it would just hang from the ceiling like a disco ball, and if enemies got too close, boom, a flash, or they get knocked down, or whatever it is that they wanted to do with it. But I just thought that it was really, really a freaking cool visual to just have a disco ball prism hanging from the air. So that is my for fun one. There's also another for fun one. I'm just gonna toss it in. We're gonna be real quick. Ninja and Wukong. I was like, listen, we just putting the two little Asian babies together. And I wanted to do Firewalker as the first ability. Second is Blazing Chakram. Now 3 is Defy, and 4 is Primal Fury. But what makes this interesting, because that sounds kind of like boring. Now of course we have Defy, which is going to add to like the survivability of Ninja. Blazing Chakram is going to get you more health and energy and all of that kind of stuff to kind of help you sustain. But the reason I wanted to do it this way, because I legitimately wanted Blazing Chakram in there so that Defy could just be Ninja surrounded, maybe doing a hula hoop with his Blazing Chakram, right? Little hula hoop action, and then all of a sudden, after he's been hit enough, the fucking flaming hula hoop explodes in an area of effect instead of like spinning around a stick. Because listen, he got a fire ring. You gotta kind of get into that. And then instead of Primal Fury with a big stick, he would just have a big glaive. Tell me that wouldn't be cute and thematic. Anyway, so those are my Warframe babies. Again, as you guys know, the rules are it's 2 different Warframes. You can't overlap abilities. You can't completely change an ability. It still has to keep the same theme. You can tweak it a little bit. And the new Warframes that I would love for you guys to include, I mean, you could even toss out old ones, but it might be a repeat from the previous videos, is Octavia, Harrow, Gara, Kahora, Revenant, Garuda, Baruch, Wisp, Hildren, Goss, and Grendel. So toss your Warframe babies down in the comments below, and whenever I find time, I'll go through, figure out which ones I think are the absolute coolest, and maybe we'll go ahead and do a revisitation of this video in the future. I'm excited to see what you guys cook up. Regardless, that about does it for me for now, and as always, love somebody, hurt nobody, and have some babies. But only in the Warframe world, because, you know, maybe in real life you can't afford it, and y'all want to make sure y'all can take care of your kids, okay? I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!